On February 2nd, 2025, Under the Puppet, along with past show guest Christine Papalexis, the Los Angeles Guild of Puppetry, and Bob Baker Marionette Theater held a live episode recording celebrating the Puppeteers of Pee-wee's Playhouse. This event sold out in less than 10 minutes and is, as of the time of this recording, the fastest sellout Bob Baker Marionette Theater has ever had. And how could it not be when you bring together Wayne White, Ric Heitzman, George McGrath, Alison, Mork, and Kevin Carlson, who are responsible for bringing to life some of the most beloved television characters of all time? I'm incredibly happy to present the audio recording of that evening on this episode of Under the Puppet.
You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Welcome to the show that is preserving puppetry through the personal stories of professional puppeteers. My name is Grant Pachoco, and this is Under the Puppet.
The reason we are here tonight is to meet the amazing puppeteers of Pee-wee's Playhouse. And I am not going to waste any time. I am just going to bring them out. First, we have a puppeteer who was on the Muppet Show tour, who worked closely with Jim Henson on that tour. Imagination Movers, The Thundermans, Team America, Men in Black 2, Flintstones, Child's Play, the new Muppet movie, and you may know him as Timmy the Tooth. On Pee-wee's Playhouse, he was Conky the Robot, Clocky, and Flory. Please welcome Kevin Carlson. Hello. All right, coming up next, we have another puppeteer from the show. This puppeteer has also worked on Sesame Street, The Muppets, Crank Yankers, Puzzle Place, Hollow Man, and also Team America. You might know her from the show as Magic Screen, Chicky Baby, Chandelier, and Cherry, Alison Mork. Coming up next, we have the Emmy-nominated writer and producer, and two of those nominations were for writing the first two seasons of Pee-wee's Playhouse. He also wrote the theme song to the series with Paul Reubens and Mark Mothersbaugh, and on the show, you know him as Globy, Countess, Flower Number 1, and The Fish in Season 2. The Fish, and in Season 2, Terry. It's George McGrath, ladies and gentlemen. Next, he was originally hired as a co-production designer on the Playhouse crew, who along with Gary Panter and Wayne White designed many aspects of the Playhouse, such as Pee-wee's Scooter and the opening title sequence. He's been awarded 3 Daytime Emmy Awards for art direction and design, as well as an Emmy for the opening title design of the Playhouse series. You might know him from the show as Mr. Window, Cool Cat, and Flower Number 3, Conky, Terry, and the salesman, Ric Heitzman. And finally, joining the panel right now, we have an artist, art director, illustrator, and puppeteer who designed the sets and characters for shows such as Shining Time Station, Beakman's World, and Riders in the Sky. He also won Billboard and MTV Music Awards for art direction for seminal music videos such as The Smashing Pumpkins' Tonight Tonight and Peter Gabriel's Big Time. And in 1986, he became the designer for the hit television show Pee-wee's Playhouse, and his work was awarded 3 Emmys. You may know him as all that, but you may also know him as Dirty Dog, Mr. Kite, Flower, and Randy. It's Wayne White, ladies and gentlemen. The Puppeteers of Pee-wee's Playhouse. So I would like to start by asking, when everyone can answer this, how did you get involved with Pee-wee's Playhouse? When did you get the job?
Well, I was an illustrator and a cartoonist in New York City, and I was doing puppet shows just for fun at drunken parties and stuff. And I never thought of it being a professional job at all. I got a job because of Alison Mork down in Nashville doing a kid show. That was my first professional job. It was called Mrs. Kabobbles Caboose. I left New York for a couple of months, went to Nashville, made Mrs. Kabobbles Caboose, carried that portfolio back with me up to New York City, showed them to a woman named Prudence Fenton at Broadcast Arts in New York City. Prudence Fenton, one of the heroes of Pee-wee's Playhouse. And she gave me a job as a set designer and as a puppet designer. And yeah, that's how I got it. Rick?
So I was walking down Broadway and past this door, and a hook came out and grabbed me and pulled me in, and walked into this production company, and I just said, I'm here to show my portfolio. And Prudence came out and gave me a stack of paper, about like this, typing paper, and a couple of ballpoint pens, and said, can you go in that room and draw for a few minutes? Can you draw what you might think would be Pee-wee's Playhouse? So I went in there and I started drawing. I drew about 30 drawings. And in about, 45 minutes, she came back in. She picked up the drawings. She walked out, didn't say a thing to me. It said, stay here. And I did. And then, unbeknownst to me, she had faxed those drawings to Paul Rubens, and he had called her back and told her to hire me. And so I joined Wayne and Gary Panter,
Yes.
who was sort of the main guy that's not here tonight, and because he actually designed the puppets for Paul's stage show that was at the Roxy Theater before any of this ever came to be. And he actually wrote the very first movie script of Pee-wee's Big Adventure with Paul.
Yeah, Gary plays a big part in me and Rick's involvement with the Playhouse, because Rick had known him since Texas. They went to school together, and
We had done puppets together, Gary and I, and we had written a bunch of puppet plays, and Paul and Gary had met at Cal Arts, and they started talking about doing this show idea from that point that they met each other. So Gary always wanted me to be involved, so I got involved. So.
George, how about you?
I was in the Groundlings, and Paul had been in the Groundlings years before, and he came and saw a show, and in the Groundlings you have to write your own sketches to be in the show, and he came backstage and said, who wrote this, who wrote this, who wrote this, and I had written them all, and he said, hello, I'm Paul Rubens, blah, blah, blah. Next week I get a phone call. Hello, this is Paul Rubens. Would you like to write a kid's show with me? And that's what happened. That's what I did. And I was a puppeteer by necessity. I was not a good puppeteer.
We all kind of fell into it.
I was not a trained puppeteer in any sense. It was just the voices I had been doing when we were writing it, and that's why he brought me to New York to do those puppets.
Well, as Wayne told half my story, I had done post-college during drunken puppet shows when we were both working at a science museum in Nashville. And then I got a job at a PBS affiliate. We were going to do a kids show. They needed a puppet person. I go, talk to Wayne, and he came back down to Nashville to do that. And then when he started working on Pee-wee's Playhouse, and this is back when people wrote letters. It was a piece of paper.
What?
Yes. But we were buddies. And he said, I'm working on this really cool, no, I won't do you, I'm sorry. I'm working on this great show, and if you were here, you'd be working on it too. And I was like, damn! And I talked to the guy who directed us in the local show, and he goes, so what are you doing here? So go to New York. And I said, I can't do that. And he goes, yes, you can. I have no place to stay. He goes, you'll work it out. So I went up there thinking I would be building puppets, and the puppets were built. And then I ended up auditioning, and it was just me, and I believe it was either Paul and Rick Abramson, or maybe it was John Paragon. But we just ran through some voices and stuff like that, and the next day, I had the job.
Yay.
Oh, and here's our only truly trained puppeteer, Mr. Kevin Carlson.
Yes.
So I came in on the second season.
After we moved to L.A.
Yeah, it came to
First
LA.
season was New York.
First season was in New York, but I came in the second season. I watched the show, and I was going, man, this is cool. I want to be part of it. And I was working on DC Follies at the time, and it was in between seasons when I got the call to audition. And they asked for a voice tape. And I was living with my folks at the time, and my mom had this old recorder, and so I put together some characters and played it for Paul and Miss Yvonne and Rick. I think you were there, and Steve Bender, the producer, and I just remember Paul said, "Oh, let's listen to your tape," and he said it just like that. and so we were listening to it. And at one point, I was listening to it going, oh, man, it was just not very good. I threw it together pretty quick. And then he goes, do you mind if I fast forward? And I went, oh, I'm done. I'm sunk. But then I, for some reason I said, oh, but you got to hear this one voice that I do. It's kind of this low gravelly jazz kind of guy.
And he talks like this. So I was Flory. Hey, Miss Yvonne, come stand over me.
So that's how I got in.
I mean, I thought I was just going to be a designer and design the puppets and make them. And then one day we went to lunch at some 50s rock and roll cafe.
I remember
the
it
music
well.
is blaring.
Yes. This was an amazing thing.
And we're having lunch, and Paul goes, well, you want to do the voice of Randy? Let's hear it. The music's playing, Buddy Holly really loud, and I'm doing Randy as loud as I can, and Dirty Dog, and he goes, okay, you're hired. I was like, what? I'm a puppeteer now too?
Paul and I set up this thing, and we basically already knew we wanted you all to be the puppets. We just didn't know which ones you wanted to be or which ones you'd be good at. So it was Alison, Rick, and Wayne sitting across from us at this little luncheonette or whatever it was, and they all did the voices.
Yeah.
Pretty much they did them, and that was that.
Yeah.
I remember Paul saying, you drew these. I'm sure you know what they sound like.
Yeah.
And we both said, sure we do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And we were lying through our teeth. Yeah. Yeah, you've done marionettes before. Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we were very experienced in our own minds.
I remember when, like the first day of Clocky, Paul and I hadn't really talked about what the voice would be like. And I knew that Edie McClurg played Clocky and several other people had played Clocky. And so Paul goes, so what are you going to do for the voice? He did say it just like that. I'm saying it.
Your impression of Paul is amazing.
Isn't it amazing?
Paul's a puppet tonight.
Yeah. And so I was looking at Clocky, and Clocky had the rolling numbers for his mouth. And so I was thinking, well, he kind of has braces, so maybe he kind of talks like this. And Paul goes, he leans into me and goes, you mean a lateral lisp? And that's how Clocky was lispy. It's time for a penny cartoon. It worked.
Wayne and Rick, when you were designing the Playhouse, how much did you take into consideration the puppets and the puppeteers and where they would be? And because you had so many different styles of... You're shaking your head.
We were all first time on our jobs. We were all doing the jobs for the first time.
Ask him how heavy Randy was.
Yeah. Again, all my other marionettes don't do this. It's the first marionette I'd ever made in my life. Head was, 10 pounds, and it just kept evolving like The Exorcist. It wouldn't stop.
Tell them about your marionette bridge.
Oh, yeah, and the first season was used to be a sweatshop loft in New York that they turned into a sound stage, and the ceilings were way too low, so we had to operate. If you're doing a marionette, you had to get on a diving board, basically, that was propped up on the edge of the flats of the set and lean out over. And so, yeah.
And the lights were right
The
there.
lights are right behind your head. And it was so down and dirty and fast making this thing. We didn't have time to finesse puppeteer technology at all, much less know about it.
5 seconds before action.
Yeah. I mean, Rick and I spent like...
we tied knots so fast. We had to tie knots. It was just insane. I just going, okay, good.
There was a lot of fishing line in the first season before they got the radio controls and stuff. And then Rick and I were working like crazy trying to make these things work.
Yeah.
We stayed up all night making Mr. Window work with the, we came up with the eyes and everything the night before. We shot the first scenes. And
it seems like everything was done in the last 18 hours of the show, really. Literally the first show.
But that's why it was so cool.
Yeah.
Because we were a bunch of New York artists doing this for the first time, not the usual TV hacks and stuff. So we brought this kind of downtown weird ass New York energy to it. That it was like an art project that happened to get on national TV.
It really was, because pretty much everybody that worked on it was an artist. In the back end of the show, the sets and puppets and everything. All the painters, everybody was an artist.
After the first season, as you referenced, the show moved to Los Angeles. How was that transition from New York to Los Angeles?
Oh, it was great.
Woohoo!
We loved it. It was professional show business time.
A steam box. I mean, it was the woman who played Mrs. Steve, Shirley Stoller, came out one day and she was supposed to play Ring Around the Rosie with the kids, and she coined the phrase, "I'm drowning in my own moisture." And Paul and I used that phrase for the rest of our time together. It was unbelievable. And I was
funky.
inside that cow. I was inside that enormous cow thing.
I was inside the chair, but they much more all the time, always on camera.
And I was inside Roger the Monster hopping around.
Yeah.
And we all suffered horribly.
Salesman.
Sorry.
I couldn't take my head off. I had to always wait for someone to help me take
Conky was the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in
Conky
Conky,
was the worst.
which was a torture device.
It was a torture device. They had aluminum bars going right into your shins, and it was a three-piece type thing. And I remember one time I would sit on set. I'm right in the center of set. I loved the job because I was learning so much about production, the lighting directors and everything, and how they were doing it. And one time I was just very motionless because I was saving it for performance because it hurt. And the lighting guy comes up with dulling spray and sprays my mask, right? And dulling
mean your
spray.
head.
Yeah. And I said, "Dude, I'm in here, dude." He goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I go, "Take my head off. I can't take it off." Because it was, the rest of the day I was loopy.
And weren't you ignored when we'd go to lunch?
Oh, yeah, sometimes. Yoo-hoo. Yoo-hoo.
That was Rick.
The
We all
first
took up
season they
yeah.
did that to me. I was in Conky, and they would everybody would leave at lunch, and I'd be, "Hey, hello,
Hello.
I'm in here."
Yeah, because you don't have hands, right? You
Well,
can't.
you do, but you can't.
You'd forget somebody was in there.
Yeah, and plus it was really heavy. Like the top part that you had to like lengthen your body and really work at trying to work that puppet.
It was an electric wheelchair.
It was an electric wheelchair basically.
Yeah, and Gregory Harrison played it too, right?
Well, he
built
built
it.
Oh, he built
Conky,
it.
And he built it around my frame because originally I was supposed to be Conky.
Because
so
in the audition, you and I had to stand back to back.
Yeah.
And luckily, we were the
you
same
were the
frame.
same size, so.
Yes.
At least you guys were spared. Like I used to take Greg's head off and stuff like that. And then I would bring him snacks and I would line them up like this where he couldn't reach them.
Alison, well, we've heard what the inside of Conky was like. What's the inside of Cherry like?
Well, can I set the record straight first?
Okay.
For years, people have said to me, "Oh, you played the blue chair." I did not play the blue chair. Apparently, it looked sort of blue at home, but it was green. It absolutely was green. In fact, I wore this sweatshirt because this is roughly the color. And my mother bought these sweatshirts for my whole family. Oh, could you hold this for me? Yeah. And she hand painted them.
That's great.
So there were 6 of these.
Awesome.
And this is the first time I've ever worn it.
Nice eyes.
Yes.
And my mom,
Boom.
my mom thanks you for the applause, and so do I.
But what was it like inside Cherry?
Well, the first year it was pretty crude. There was I was sitting on sandbags. There was also some really uncomfortable bars and stuff like that, and it was hard to operate. But how I operated it was it had a foot pedal, which you had to really smash to get the mouth to work. The eye blink was also on foot pedals, and the left and right of the eyeballs were on a thing on my head. Oh, and I heard that the only part of the first Cherry that made it to Los Angeles was the eyes. So they totally rebuilt it. It was a little more roomy. It was a little more comfortable. But the eyes worked with remote control box. And I am a control freak. And no one was going to do those eyes for me because that's what all the emotion is.
As we can see.
So yes, so this is, I would have no shoes on inside the chair. And I would have the box on the ground. This is something that's made
For thumbs.
right? And I would be going like this. But when I wanted to talk, it was like this. So Cherry could do 3 things, talk, look left and right, and blink, but only 2 at the same time because I only have 2 feet.
Do the voice.
How's about sitting on me, Kevin? Is Susan here? I take it back.
Well, you mentioned that, Paul was involved with the casting and the voices and honing in on the voices. How involved was Paul in sort of directing the puppetry performances? Was he involved in that?
Not too much.
Not too much.
Yeah. But back to your other question, when we moved to California,
Sure.
we rebuilt nearly every puppet. The original broadcast starts in New York kept the original puppets, and good riddance because they were pieces of crap. No, they were funky because I had built them and Rick had built them.
They needed to stay in New York.
So
let's
we
put
got
it that way.
we got really
Paul
good.
hated the original Globy face.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so he literally took the clay, and it used to be big eyes and a little pug nose in the first season. Then he took the clay and made that schnoz that he had from there on in, and made the eyes like little dots. He hated that face on the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we got really good shops out here in LA to reproduce the
In
puppets.
fact, Christine Papalexis
Yes.
actually built Clocky and Flory.
Yes.
Christine, shout out.
And it was really wonderful. They did a great job of reproducing them. We got to art direct them, but the workings were so much better. So it was really nice.
When you moved out here, you had other people to maintain them as well, or were
We
you
did.
still?
We got a bigger crew to maintain the puppets, and we had 2 guys full-time
And we got Van
puppet
Snowden.
wranglers.
Vance.
Van
And
Snowden, who
Yeah.
went inside the cow for me from then on, and he could do it because the mouth of the thing was like
It was hard rubber.
and I'm doing this.
That's one of my.
Barely moving. He could do it fantastic. He also operated Terry,
Right.
and he was fantastic. He was the original HR Pufnstuf.
Yeah.
Right.
And he could do anything.
Yes.
And-
He was a master.
With a cigarette in his mouth,
Yeah.
he could do anything. Yeah.
And his constant refrain was, "I hate puppets."
Well, it sounds like they're so pleasant to be in that I can't see why. George, can you walk us through sort of what the writing process it was for Pee Wee's Playhouse?
So the first season, there were 5 writers, myself, Paul, a guy named Max Robert, who he went to college with, John Paragon, who was John B., and Mike Varhol, who co-wrote original Pee Wee's Big Adventure. So there were 5 of us. We had a little office at first in Hollywood. Paul was faxing puppet drawings and approving things and constantly on the fax machine doing that. And we just started writing it. Then we moved to his house, which, let's just say this. I sat at the computer and did the typing because everybody else was distracted. So anyway, so that's how we did. We did 13 episodes. The second season, it was just he and I that wrote them. Yeah, from then on, I was not involved because after the second season was over, I got my own TV show on Nick at Night called On the Television. Ask your grandparents. But so I had my own show at that time, so I couldn't do the puppets anymore. I had to just come in and do them with ADR, just revoice the puppets after the fact.
I would also like to add, my wife, Mimi Pond, wrote an episode of the Playhouse. Mimi.
Yeah. Quite a few people wrote episodes in the last 3 seasons, yeah.
Was there room for improvisation, or were the scripts like pretty much locked?
The scripts were pretty much locked. I mean, there really wasn't a lot of improvisation. Really, no.
They were written well.
And we also had to be really careful because we could not physically see. Well, did we have monitors? I don't even remember we had monitors.
little bitty
little tiny,
Sonys.
tiny, like.
Sony Watchmans.
The Pee Wee character does all these sort of, spontaneous noises and stuff like that, and you could not step on those noises.
Yeah.
So you really had to stick with the script and also listen, so you didn't jump in on a, oh, I wasn't going to do him.
I think part of it, the first season is just such a hot hell place, and it was a time thing. We didn't have time to play around. Everything had, we were just stuck to the script. Not that that was a bad thing necessarily, but we rarely, even Paul rarely would improvise anything.
Were there any sort of segments or puppets that had to be scrapped or reworked because they were just too ambitious to work on the show?
There were some that were scrapped between 1 and 2, but it wasn't because they were too ambitious. The salesman was scrapped because it was called Big Head, and I said to Paul, when I was in school, people used to call me Big Head. and he nicely just said, okay, we won't do it anymore.
That's sweet.
And who else? What other puppets?
Was it a chandelier?
That's the only one I can think of that was scrapped from the first season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the actors changed from season 1 to season 2, but I guess all the puppets did say.
The puppet that gave us a lot of trouble were the fish, because they were really underwater. And
What are you talking about?
and the controls went out the back of through the tank, out the back of the wall, and so there was lots of seals that could leak, and it was always leak, and they leaked.
Yeah.
It was always leaking. But it was crazy to do it under real water. But Paul wanted real water, and they were, latex, and anytime you have springs and stuff underwater, you're asking for it,
Do it with me, Alison.
George did both of the voices, but I would puppeteer one fish, but he couldn't laugh as two voices. So to this day, one of my favorite
Things in life?
things in life, what am I going to say? Credits is the word I'm thinking of, is fish laugh.
Fish laugh.
Fish laugh.
Or fish wife.
And just something about Globey. Season 1, it was a remote control thing, and Globey was
Never worked.
out of control. And Globey would be on camera, and his mouth was going. And he wasn't
cat.
saying anything.
He was stuck.
A cat getting ready to eat a bird.
And he would turn halfway. I mean, it was a crazy.
And of course, you were a master at remote control.
I was a master at remote control. That was my thing. I thought, hey, good, I get to do my thing. Yeah, I had never done it before. I had never done any puppeteering before.
Well, Wayne provided a lot of the video footage that you saw as you were coming in tonight. While all of you were coming in, the 5 of you were sitting up there just laughing and laughing at the stuff on the video. Wayne, you had a documentary made about you, Beauty is Embarrassing, and you kind of talked about this. But let's talk a little bit about backstage, because it was this whole thing, as we saw from these things, and like you created your own puppet show and other things backstage. So can you talk about sort of the backstage antics?
There was a lot of backstage antics because we had a lot of downtime.
A lot of downtime.
It was shot on film, and as anybody who's worked on film knows, every scene has to be relit and camera. It's a slow process. So we were in our little dressing room puppet lounge, and eventually we created our own puppet show called the Flocked Box Theater. We couldn't wait for the cut so we could get back and do our own little puppet show. I was playing the banjo too loud, and Kevin had his ukulele, and antics all the time. We spent a lot of time together in our little puppet lounge. And of course,
songs were written and performed.
yes.
Miss Yvonne loved the puppet lounge.
Yes.
Miss Yvonne
Yes.
pretended, I think pretty much everybody was her husband, not
Yeah.
me. But she
Not
had
me.
boyfriends in the puppet lounge.
Yes.
She attacked me on the couch once.
Yeah. She was the only cast member that would hang out with us in
Yeah.
the puppet lounge.
Yeah.
We asked the others, they wouldn't come in.
She was the most beautiful woman inside and out of
Yes.
Puppetland.
Yes. And we drew a lot, especially me and Rick. We were drawing all the time. It was just so stimulating to be there, and it was like an art project, an art performance the whole time, whether we were on the set or not. We were performing and thinking about art, thinking about creating things. It was just the most fun job ever. I mean, it was the best job I ever had in TV, that's for sure.
And we had intercom so we could talk to each other. And in between takes and whatnot.
Yes, we had our own little
We had our
private
own little dialogues going on.
thing.
And Paul loved listening to that. But
Yeah.
really, he told me many times because he really loved our little show because he could listen to it while we weren't on stage.
Right.
And Alison was too breathy,
She
and
was
so
too
she had to
breathy.
wear the ball of shame.
Big foam ball, and it kept getting
Rubber
bigger
ball
and
on
bigger.
her microphone.
It started about this big and it got bigger and bigger and bigger.
And also,
Still too breathy.
When Alison would mouth off, there was a song called "Put Your Rifle Down, Sweet Alice, Put Your Rifle."
Full down.
it was sung a lot.
That was sung a lot. Anytime she was snippy.
Sniffing me.
Well, I mean, working with Paul was obviously so much fun, but were there any other sort of human characters on the show that you just loved working with? Obviously, Lynne Stewart as Miss Yvonne, but
Reba,
Reba,
Larry
Phil,
Fishburne.
Larry.
When he was Larry.
Larry was a lot
Yeah,
of
you guys
fun.
can't call him Larry, only us. 'cause
Vic Trevino they were all fantastic.
Suzanne
They were
Kent.
all, in the
Lawrence
second
Fishburne.
season. The first season, there were a couple of clunks. But in the second season, everybody was fantastic.
Yeah.
And nicest
Especially
people.
the puppeteers.
And
Especially the Puppeteers.
Yes, yes.
They all knew their lines all the time. They all gave great energy every time they were on set. They were fantastic.
and the
All
King of
them were.
Cartoons, too.
Yes.
King
Yeah.
of Cartoons.
William Marshall.
Blackula.
He came out one time, and he was going,
Let the cartoon begin.
I'm dry, is what he said. Remember?
Oh, I remember.
I'm dry.
I remember him. He asked Paul one time, "What's my motivation?"
He was a trained theatrical actor.
He was an actor.
He was.
You know who was really fun also on the Christmas special was Annette Funicello and
Oh,
Frankie
yeah.
Avalon.
Oh, they were
Yeah.
a scream.
They were fun. They were a lot of fun.
That was a whole other thing. I mean, you had Cher, you had all of these big stars.
Grace Jones.
Yeah.
Magic
but,
Johnson.
Charo.
But Frankie and Annette were just great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were on
They-
it the most.
they were great,
sort
yeah.
of the co-stars of the special.
Sasha Gabor. She had her scene with the Countess, and she didn't know her lines. And she called instead of saying Countess, she
Yes.
called her Cowhide. And as she's walking off, I'm talking to my husband. Yeah, I'll give you Cowhide. She was not.
If you listen-
Charo was great.
Charo was
fantastic.
great.
Yeah.
Cher was great.
Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton.
Oh, Little Richard was
Yeah,
fantastic.
Little
Yeah.
Richard was the most amazing thing.
That
to be able
was
to work with
incredible.
Little Richard,
Yeah.
especially
He
for
tore
us.
my
Yeah.
arms off.
Wayne,
I
you
was
gotta tell
Magic
what he
String was
said.
helping him skate.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, you know, lean forward, little Richard, lean backwards, little.
We were out
But
of the
it was an honor.
we were out on the ice pond set, and Pee Wee was teaching him how to skate. And he had a pillow tied to his butt, you know. And between takes, he went up to Paul. He goes, "Paul, now when I fall, do you want me to scream like a white woman or a black woman?" That was, yeah. Black. Woo! He was amazing.
He was.
And Dolly was a thrill, too, to me.
To me, that was one of the most thrilling.
So
things
Dolly
we did.
Paul did a sequence on her show, on the Dolly Parton variety show, and she came and did a Hey Good Looking with Paul. It was great.
did any of you ever appear on the show in a non-puppet role?
I played, Alison and I, in the first season, played prank caller lady and her husband, the policeman. And in the second season, I played Zizzy Baluba.
That's right. And I
was Zizzy Baluba.
that's
He was
right.
Zizzy Baluba.
Remember Zizzy Baluba?
The best show. The
That was a
best
great makeup.
show. Yeah.
And I was a wrong number on the picture phone booth. And I think that was the pajama party show. I ordered a pizza, and it was the wrong number. I'll have a large pepperoni pizza. I got to evoke my southern roots on that one.
Do you have a favorite episode? This is for everybody. Do you have a favorite episode, either just for the story or just because it was a fun episode to work on?
Conky's Breakdown with Jimmy Smits.
I loved Pajama Party, not because I was in it on the phone, But just the whole concept of the pajama party, everybody came over with their pajamas, and Pee Wee made fruit salad. And that was a lot of fun. And the Christmas special was great.
The Christmas special is amazing.
That was really kind of...
It's amazing, amazing.
Magical.
Hour. It's an hour? It's an hour?
They were all good.
Yeah.
Grace Jones.
Oh, Grace Jones, yeah.
Yeah.
She was off-putting.
I think everybody was scared of her.
She was scary. She was scary.
Yeah.
She was the anti-Charo, because Charo was very welcoming.
Charo was lovely.
Was there a moment while working on the show where you just thought, wow, this is something special? This is something.
Every single second of every single day, yes.
Yeah, no, we all knew it was something special, definitely.
I just remember when we were designing it, just thinking people are going to lose their minds over this.
I know. It was just
because
like...
there was just nothing like it.
There was nothing like it, and we were like set loose in the candy store.
Yeah, and Paul was just going, yep, do that, yep, do that, yep,
Make
do
it
that.
crazier.
Yeah.
Can you make it weirder? It's like, wow, what a boss.
It was.
And he hired me. And
He was the most. He was the most free. He just let us do what we wanted. He goes, he would say, "Can you do that?" And I go, "Yeah." Then do it. And it was just amazing. It was like we never ever had another boss like. I mean, I never worked with anybody like that who was so open.
It was the perfect storm, you know. He was the guy with open mind. He knew about art. He was a crazy performance artist. He had so much power because his celebrity was at the peak. It was just the perfect storm for an artist, you know. And it was just nothing like it, nothing.
And when we had guests that would come into the Playhouse, I was conky sitting there watching people walk in, and just the magical, their faces showing just like the art, and everywhere you looked, it was just spectacular. You know,
It was a big thing for people to come see that set. There were lots and lots and lots of celebrities who came just to see the set.
What would you say is the highlight of working on Pee-wee's Playhouse for you individually?
The highlight was the first season when it premiered, and it just dropped like a bomb, and it was just such a thrill. Nothing even close in my life was like that. So just the first rush of it all was just when it premiered, that first show, watching it on TV, and then knowing that it was rippling out across the nation. That was amazing.
Hadn't we worked all night before the premiere? Yeah, so we were all together. Yeah.
We worked more than all night.
We were exhausted.
It was like a 30-something hour day.
Yeah.
Because I remember the first show, we had to be, at least the three of us were up because we had to deliver, and we were so dead tired. And I remember the very first thing that we had to do was the opening, and it was the Puppet Theater. The very first shot was the Puppet Theater, and we had had no sleep. And I remember the focus puller, he leaned into us, and we were both just dead tired. He goes, "Don't worry about a thing. There's only 4 million people watching you."
I think the biggest thing for me was writing the theme song.
Yeah.
And having Cyndi
great.
Lauper record it. That was great. Little story, of course it was Cyndi Lauper who did it, but when we went to CBS recording studios, Cyndi Lauper was there, and she brought a friend of hers called Ellen Foley. And at the time, Cyndi Lauper was transitioning from like Girls Don't Want to Have Fun to True Colors, and she wanted to be taken seriously as an actress, so she didn't want to do it. And this girl, Ellen Foley, recorded it, and then Paul twisted her arm, and she goes, "All right, but I don't want any credit." So that was insulting. That was an insulting Cyndi Lauper impression.
And here she is. No.
So the credit always read Ellen Foley that was singing, but it was Cyndi Lauper.
For me, it was life-changing, and I kind of went literally from the backyard to local television, where we would do the episode in one take, to doing national television. And I kind of didn't know what was going on, but I knew it was really, really special. And the people were incredibly special. And yeah, it was so exciting. It was so exciting.
I think for me, the highlight was my wife was pregnant at the time. I was sitting behind the wall where Clocky was, and I had a kind of a fort set up. I brought in some houseplants and stuff, and it was comfy, cozy back there. And I was reading the Father's Almanac. So I was prepared for our first child, and so that was a highlight for me. But no, working with these people here was such a great thrill. I mean, we had so much fun. It was, the secret word is fun. I mean, and it was right on cue.
And the five of us have not been together since it was like 1990 something in the same place at the same time, and this is really fun.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take some time to let you ask some questions as well. So start thinking of questions. I have one more question before we get to the audience questions. I have always thought that you really make it in Hollywood when you have an action figure, when someone can go in a store and buy things based on a character that you have done. What's it like being able to, like even still today, they're making figures from the Playhouse?
It's cool.
It's really, really cool. And actually, yeah, and Grant was the one who pointed out to me there's some website, what is it, like the Alison Mork action figure page? And when I looked at it, it goes, oh no, there's so many more than that.
It's one of those specialty websites.
Very special. I've seen it, Grant's seen it.
That's 2 whole visitors.
It's great to be able to have designed something that they made into toys. It's always wonderful to see. It's a great honor, really.
Did you have any say, like when they brought the first ones in, like this is what they're going to look like? Did you have some say?
Yeah, Paul was very, very, very particular, and there were many rounds on many of those products. There was like 50 licensees, and I remember because I was doing a lot of that work myself. And
remember, like at lunchtime, he would sit on the purple poof in the middle of the Playhouse, and there'd be a line of people with little prototypes of toys and T-shirts and stuff.
But he would make them go round and round with a design. If he didn't like it,
Yeah.
it really.
He did that with you in the puppets too, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All the faxes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was like A-okay. It was, many
He was.
faxes.
Paul was an artist. He really could see it. He really was. He had a really good visual sense.
I remember when we were building Billy Baloney for the first time, and we went to see it, and it was like 3 times the size. It was like, these guys had worked for a month on this thing. It was like a fiberglass, carefully crafted head, and I was trying my best to justify it. It's like, maybe it'll work. And these guys were like heartbroken. They were looking at me, it's too big. And I was like, well, yeah, maybe it'll work. And Rick took a picture of it, and he's got this expression on his face like, this is not going to work. And I had drawn a smaller body below it. Maybe that'll work. And Rick's like, we showed it to Paul. No, it's too big.
At this point in the evening, we open the floor to audience questions. The audience was unmiked during this segment, so I will repeat the questions in the studio, then cut back to the panel for their answers. First, the panel was asked where the puppets and major set pieces are today.
Here they are right now.
This is a sting operation. Where are the puppets? We
They're,
got you together for the first time in how many years?
now they're all in the Pee Wee
Archives.
Yeah.
Archives.
We don't have them.
You mean the fruitcake room?
That's where they are.
And as a follow-up question, they were asked if they still have anything from the show.
No. Not really. No. I mean, Rick and I have our drawings, which we
Some of them.
cherish. Yeah.
I have. He let us take 2 things. Did he let me take something from the set? I took
Really?
I have a little toy car.
You didn't let me?
2 toy cars from the set.
He didn't let me take anything, but I have a couple of things.
Alison, put your rifle down, sweetheart.
I said it in a nice way, George, in the sweetest way possible. I have. There's a thing where he took a sock and put it on his hand, and he drew sloppy eyes. He made a sock puppet. That came home with me. And there was also an episode where the Beatnik puppets were doing art projects with Miss Yvonne, and you did
I think we
a
all.
sculpture, and you did
Yeah, I think we all have
collage,
those.
and I did a painting. And
Oh,
I
I
think we-
might have that.
I think I have mine.
Yeah.
See?
But that was the shows. Those were the puppets paintings.
Yeah, those were ours. By all rights, those were ours.
Have you ever thought of doing an art book? Is there any plans to do an art book or thought about it?
Well, that would be up to the Pee Wee estate. Yeah, it would be great. Yeah, but yeah, that's a good idea. But maybe one day.
The panel was then asked about the amazing Del Rubio triplets being on the show and if there were any dream guests the show was unable to get.
Yes,
We loved them. The Del Rubio
they were fantastic.
The Del Rubio triplets.
Oh yeah.
They were on twice. They had a Christmas special and a
Yeah.
regular episode, right?
They were
Yeah.
really
They were
fun.
So fun.
Paul loved those women.
Yeah.
Beyond reason. Really loved those women.
They were as sweet and innocent as you would think they were too. They were very kind of vulnerable and sweet and shy. Yeah, they weren't show busy at all.
People liked to do it because it was just so,
Yeah,
like,
quirky.
it was fun for Jimmy Smith to do it.
And Dolly, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Next, the Puppeteers were asked about the classic Penny cartoons that were a major part of the series.
Yeah, they actually hired little girls.
They were different girls for even within one cartoon. They were edited from, they would interview like 20 little girls that were between the ages of like 5 and 9.
And Prudence said that they would just have the girl tell a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all improvised.
All improvised, yeah.
Prudence
And
did that. She did so many things. Prudence.
Yeah.
Prudence. And the very first season of Penny were animated by the Aardmans, who most people know for Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, and he sort of pioneered that technique of taking just candid people just talking,
And
the
then
zoo-
animating to
the
it.
animals at the zoo kind of concept.
Yeah.
and it just applied that to Penny. That's why it's so fresh, you know.
Yeah.
Then they asked where the idea for all the segments that took place in Pee Wee's fridge came from.
Yeah, Prince produced basically all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the idea of the show from, I think, our design perspective is that we wanted to have as much stuff alive as possible. Meaning, like a old 30s cartoon where everything is alive. It's like the dinosaurs and the fridge stuff and just, the ants.
You remember who did the fridge?
Well,
The animators?
the fridge animation was done. Is anybody here tonight that was on the cruise? Because there were numerous crews of fridge animation, and there were over 200 people that worked for just the animation side of the show, which nobody on our side probably saw except for me because I went there a lot to supervise them. That was all being done like at night and all around the same time the show was being made, and it all was kind of crazy to do because everything was just being done at such a very quick rate. But I would work at night and the day because I'd do the animation at night and then do the stuff in the daytime on the show. So it was kind of a crazy schedule.
Me and Rick did design some of the food in the fridge.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Well, all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
one of my missions on the show was to get away from Muppets. I didn't want anything to look like a Muppet. I didn't want that felt look. I didn't want that Muppet look at all. In fact, Bill Baird was one of my biggest inspirations myself. I don't know about Rick, but I thought of Bill Baird a lot when I was designing puppets. I wanted to bring back this kind of 50s pre-Muppet kind of look, which is also alive here at Bob Baker also.
An audience member then asked a brilliant question: what was the biggest way that being on Pee Wee's Playhouse changed your life?
cha-ching.
Cha-ching!
Yeah, and instant street cred,
Yeah.
The minute you mentioned you worked on Pee Wee's, you're kidding,
Yeah, no, before Rick and I were cartoonists and illustrators, working the mean streets of New York, which is really a tough way to go. And all of a sudden, we're television designers and TV puppeteers. So yeah, that was a significant change.
What really changed my writing career was the Emmy nominations. Just go into a meeting.
The Emmy
two-time
nominations changed
I
all
never
our careers.
We never won because of Sesame Street. And they're
Sesame
smart.
Muppets!
Ah, damn Muppets.
We teach things, But that really changed my status as a writer.
I could, but I'm sure the same for Wayne, because I had meetings with everybody. I met with
It opened
the
every
president
door.
of Disney, everybody.
Yeah.
It opened doors. I could get a meeting anywhere. You worked on Pee Wee's Playhouse, come in and talk to us. The show, it was, it was magical, really.
So.
It was a huge, huge thing for all of us. Yeah, changed
Yeah,
our
I moved
lives.
from Nashville to New York because of it. And so I went from having a 9-to-5 job to being a professional puppeteer.
Yeah. Mailbox money.
The panel was then asked about their childhood heroes.
Oh gosh,
Who were your
Mr.
childhood
Peppermint.
heroes?
Look him up.
TV-wise, or like, well, that's a tough one.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Well, for me, all early children's, like Soupy Sales, all the early children's television stuff, I was a major fan of, before this, so it made sense that we did this, really. But all puppets from before that, I guess I would say. Everything that...
The early Sherry Lewis show, when it was just
Oh,
her,
yeah.
was
Sure,
amazing,
sure.
amazing. Her separation of character, and she had no bushes to push puppets through, or, it was just those 1950s and early 60s.
And Senior Wences.
It's all right. Mary Poppins was huge for me, the movie Mary Poppins. I was obsessed with that in the 2nd and 3rd grade, and I just couldn't get that movie out of my mind. Especially Bert, the chimney sweep, the way he would draw pictures on the sidewalk and then jump into it.
I was not a child. No, I was a child, but I was not a child when I watched this show, but Mr. Rogers was so important to my thought process about children, and loved him.
The Muppets kind of did it for me.
Muppets!
Sorry.
Damn Muppets.
Sorry. But also in The Sound of Music, the puppet show and The Sound of Music, we watched that over the holidays, and it was just like, wow, it's so good.
Another one, when I was growing up, Boston area, there was local shows that you could actually be on. And my favorite was Rex Trailer's Boomtown. And he was a cowboy with a real horse, and there was a swan puppet, and there was a moose puppet, which inspired the character I played at the PBS affiliate later. But I loved Rex Trailer's Boomtown.
There was one show that nobody's ever heard of anymore. It was called Shenanigans with
I
Stubby
love
K.
Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought of that show a lot when I was designing the Playhouse.
Shenanigans with Stubby K.
With Stubby K. It was like a
Yes.
giant board game come to life. And it was very Playhouse-like. And it was
Yeah.
on my mind a lot when I was designing the show.
Finally, an audience member wanted to know about maintaining their creative integrity while navigating the business side of show business.
Still figuring that one out.
Don't sign any NDAs.
Well, the advice I give to young artists is to don't wait for somebody to give you a break. Make your own breaks, create your own worlds. And oftentimes the world will come to you, if it's done out of love and it's creative and it's your original voice. Of course, that's pie in the sky kind of thing, and a lot of the times they don't. But don't wait around for an institution to validate you. Make yourself the institution.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
All right, well, we have a little surprise. We're going to end with a little musical number here.
Here's a little song that I wrote.
Yes, that Wayne White actually wrote.
It's called At the Playhouse Door. At the Playhouse door, at the Playhouse door, everybody comes to see flowers 1, 2, 3. There's Miss Yvonne and Captain Carl. They are so in love. They don't care about anything except the stars above. At the Playhouse door. At the Playhouse door. At the Playhouse door. At the Playhouse door. Everybody comes to see. Everybody comes to see. Flowers 1, 2, 3. Flowers 1, 2, 3. Cowboy Curtis, come on in, but you can sleep outside. Sing along, big say hello. Leave your problems out on the porch and jump right in the show. At the Playhouse door. At the Playhouse door. At the Playhouse door. At the Playhouse door. Everybody come to see. Everybody come to see. Flowers 1, 2, 3. Flowers 1, 2, 3. Pee-wee's on his scooter, escaping through the sky. Where he's gone, we don't know, but we'll see him by and by. At the Playhouse door. At the Playhouse door. At the Playhouse door. At the Playhouse door. Everybody come to see. Everybody come to see. Flowers 1, 2, 3. Flowers 1, 2, 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Puppeteers of Pee-wee's Playhouse. Kevin Carlson, Wayne White, Alison Mork, George McGrath, and Ric Heitzman. This was an incredible event, and I cannot thank Wayne White, Ric Heitzman, George McGrath, Alison Mork, and Kevin Carlson enough for being part of the show. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Lynne Stewart, who played Miss Yvonne on Pee-wee's Playhouse. This event was recorded before her passing on February 21st, 2025, but as you heard, she meant a lot to those who worked on the show. We send out our thoughts to Lynne Stewart's family and to all who knew her and were lucky enough to work with her. She is, was, and always will be the most beautiful woman in Puppetland. If you would like to see photos from the Puppeteers of Pee-wee's Playhouse event, including pictures of Alison Mork's incredible cherry sweatshirt, visit the Under the Puppet Instagram or Facebook page. I'd like to thank my co-producer, Christine Papalexis, on behalf of the Los Angeles Guild of Puppetry for working on this event with me. Huge thanks also goes out to Bob Baker Marionette Theater for hosting the event. Thanks to Bob Baker staff members Alex Evans, Winona Bechtel, and Mary Thompson, volunteers Sally Phillips, Nick Leonard, Steph Choi, and Tony Candelaria, videographers Dylan Young and Sean Goodwin, photographer Angel Origi, stagehand Jessica Gonzalez, and puppeteers Gina Dunca, Nova Odette, Caden Heelander, and Hannah Watanabe Rocco. Thank you all for making this evening so amazing. I would also like to send a special thank you out to all the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who help make this show possible. Patreon patrons at the producer level and above who get a special shout out are Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Tony Urbano, Brandy, David Akers, Paul, Scott Armstrong, Vicky Sebring, Ricky Chavez, Karina, Jeff Toro, and Lee Thompson. To become a patron, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. And thank you for your support. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback about the show, you can send them via email to underthepuppet@gmail.com, or you can connect with the show on Instagram or Facebook by searching for Under the Puppet. And don't forget to tell a friend about the show. This episode featured music by Dan Ring and was edited by Steven Staver. Thank you so much for listening. Under the Puppet is copyright 2025 Saturday Morning Media Grant Pachoco executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com.
You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.